Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 59 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasanowski, and I'm the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have some awesome polls to talk about today. We've got Minor Arcana, number 5, Titans, number 19, Nightwing, number 122, Laura Kinney Wolverine, number 2, and The Moon is Following Us, number 5.
That's right, and if you enjoy any of those reviews or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. And you can find me on all of the socials at JJAZ1111.
And anywhere you can find a Katie Markham Pro, you will find this Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's move into the news. Okay, so we're a little late to the party on this one because this broke right after we had basically recorded last week's episode. But this is, and I'm setting this up because I know Katie probably somehow has not heard this, despite being it being maybe the biggest piece of news that is broken in comics in a very long time. But we have learned that Diamond Comic Distributors has declared bankruptcy.
I did hear that.
Good job, Katie.
Thank
I'm proud
you.
of you. But yes, Diamond has declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy as of about a week ago when this will go up, which obviously we had covered a few of their issues. They closed a lot of their distribution facilities. I think some people had kind of seen something like this coming. They were not getting books out to retailers on time. They've been having a bunch of issues in the last 2 months, I want to say, is
something like that.
When it's been going on, maybe a little bit longer than that. And there have been a lot of issues, and this is kind of the chapter just to make it clear. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not like, a toast thing. That's kind of a restructuring.
It's like their business as usual as their finances get reconfigured.
Exactly. So, but this is still big news from the former biggest distributor in comics. The important thing to note right off the top before I throw it over to Katie to get some of her thoughts, and I have a bunch of follow-up stuff because a week has passed and more has happened. But before I throw it back to you for your thing, I want to just remind people, because I think a lot of people who don't follow comics very closely and don't know everything that's going on still see Diamond as this big distributes everybody publisher. So just to get this out here, they do not carry any of the big fish. They're not carrying Marvel, Diamond, Image, Dark Horse. Like any of those IDW, they're not the sole distributor of any of those, and they're not even a distributor of a lot of those big guys. So this is not the huge, fish being, affected by this. Yeah. The big thing is they're still the carrier of almost every small press comic book company. So that's the big thing here. But just to shed a little light on people who maybe don't know the distribute stuff. But then I want to get your thoughts on your immediate reaction to this. Obviously you've heard it before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a continuation of a trend of small presses really struggling in the physical store space. It's been so rough for publishers to really get a foothold in comic shops, and I think a big part of that is because comic shops can't take big risks on them anymore because comic shops are in such a tough place right now.
Yeah, it's a bad feedback loop.
Exactly, yeah, where, and then, to make the feedback loop extra relevant to us as people who write comics, that makes it harder for small presses to pick up things that they don't have big names attached to. Yeah. Because it just becomes this culture of buying things that you already know that you like.
Yeah, you can't take too many risks.
Exactly, yeah. And when the publishers aren't taking risks, then certainly the readers aren't taking risks because they don't have that new cover on the rack to draw them in so they can buy that, new book and learn these new creators. And I mean, I think one of the big responses to that is the kind of online marketplace of, Kickstarter comics, of digital marketing your comic. But it's such a deep bummer to me as someone who really puts a lot of value on a book in a store. Obviously the important thing is that people
shelf, right? See that cool cover and be like, oh, what is that? And that's a much harder thing. Now it's really if somehow you get to the step where it's like, okay, this small press is taking a chance on a new creator, it's basically all of the sales of that are going to come from pre-orders. So you still have to market online because you're not going to end up in stores where people can then see it on the shelf. And I agree with you. That's
which is such a it just stinks because I feel like my I don't know if we've talked about this. I don't think that we have. But I think that one of my markers for success is if somebody buys my book and I didn't sell it to them. Because
100%.
I think that I generally have enthusiasm for the things that I do, and you know, people generally like me when I talk to them. I think I'm friendly. So like,
couldn't be me.
Couldn't be him, yeah. So if I walk up to someone and I'm like, "Here's my $4 comic book," I think there's a non-zero chance that person is gonna say, "Here's $4, I'll take your comic book." But for me, the success would be somebody walking up to their friend and saying, "You should go buy this comic book," and then them going and buying that comic book, where it's not my pitching of the book that sells it, where it's like that organic new fan of something that I've written.
I think we talked about that a little bit in our interview with the Pedestrian team, because they had a lot of very organic word of mouth growth of their book. So, check out that interview for a little bit of kind of what that looks like. And even with the great word of mouth, they talked all about the difficulties of being a small press, book coming out with fairly big name, with people who've done, things at big publishers. So, do you want to jump to the next kind of update in the line, because we've got a decent amount of things. So the next thing, and I might jump kind of through this one because I don't know that we're going to have anything specifically to say about this, but I found it very interesting, is Diamond Comic Distributors then received a court approval for a $41 million funding amount to help them restructure and keep running their business as usual, which is honestly really nice for these small press publishers that could have been screwed and not have their books in stores. But it is, I don't know if it's just me not having a concept of like what things at scale look like. 41 million feels like a lot for Diamond distributing small press books.
I mean, because Penguin Random House goes through Lunar, or do they do their own stuff? Or do they go through Diamond?
They are a distributor.
Okay, yeah. Because there are obviously like big businesses that have their hands in the comic book world. Yeah. But like Diamond is not one that I would expect to get like a big bailout, but like you say, it's hard to like on a national decades old business understand where $40 million comes in, because it's such a factor of scale that we have never dealt with personally.
No, I've never been given $41 million.
No.
I ask all the time. It's really weird,
11 bankruptcies.
But yeah, that's essentially the amount, so they can continue to run as usual, in my understanding of it. But where is?
Yeah, I was just going through real quick to get a sense of the chapter 11 of it all. Because it's not like they're just being given it; they're being loaned the money.
Yes. They're being granted as a grant. If that wasn't clear, it is a grant. But yeah, I'm trying to. Okay, yeah. So, assuming you want me to,
you keep going.
So the next interesting piece of it all is that this is where basically Image comes in. And Image is the biggest publisher that Diamond is still distributing, but they are not the sole distributor. Diamond is also being distributed by Lunar. And I actually think it's through Lunar that Diamond gets their
Image.
Whatever no, Diamond.
You said Diamond was being distributed through Lunar.
Oh, sorry. Image is being distributed through Lunar, and Diamond even gets their stock through Lunar. It's just like a secondary thing. I don't know how that works, but that's kind of how that works. But the interesting thing that came of this is basically right around when they declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy, Image Comics notified Diamond that they will not be fulfilling Diamond distributors' orders anymore. So basically, Image pulled out completely of Diamond. And when Diamond tried to meet with Image Comics to discuss the issue and actually told several news sources that they would be meeting with Image to discuss the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Image then reached out to those same news sources and said they will not be meeting with Diamond.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I mean, it's so rough because I understand that obviously Image needs to protect Image. Like no comic company has money to spare.
no.
But it's really rough because obviously Image books are like, when we're talking about small press books, we're not talking about Image.
No,
like,
no, not at all.
Exactly. So if Diamond doesn't have those Image dollars to work through, that's like such a huge blow to them, because then it really becomes like boutique publishing. And that's not something that can sustain a $41 million payback plan.
No. But I think the rough thing when you look at it from Image's perspective, full speculation, but it's probably like the books are getting to places late. Like they are not on time. People are not getting their books when they're supposed to get the books. And that has a feedback thing of like, oh, now
Huge
people
one,
are in the store to buy what they want to buy. I mean, I don't know if you've run into it, but I've had multiple weeks where, constantly I have certain books that are from Diamond where they're on back order. They're not quite there. And my store's like, we'll get them to you when we get them. And, all of that stuff. So I fully get why, comic companies don't have to would look at this and say, we don't want our hand in that anymore because it's not working. And that can be disastrous for any publisher that isn't Marvel or DC, because like, I don't care if you are Image, as well as Image is doing, I don't think they're in a position where they can like...
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. No comic company has money to burn.
No, exactly.
So like, I get why they're doing it. It's just such a bummer because, I mean, as with anything, like Penguin Random House pretty much just does their own in-house stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
You are mistaken. You are mistaken. Yeah, I feel like all the time that they are straight up distribute. I think they distribute. I want to say DC, or they distribute somebody really big.
I believe you.
They distribute somebody big. I feel like we've had this conversation before about Penguin being a distributor.
I think so too.
We'll look into it after. But yeah, no, they do distribute. They are straight up a distributor now.
Look, I have such a skewed perception of Penguin Random House because my old lady house, I was working in a bookstore when the two merged, and it was like a huge deal. It's like, oh no, books are gone. It's done for. So like, oh yeah, Penguin Random House, they don't have any money. My poor guys.
Yeah, I think that's why though. Like, I think that's why, if I'm not mistaken, I know it might be, but I think that's why DC had moved to Tuesdays for a while, because that was the book day, and once they went with the book distributor, they just wanted them to be able to do both on the same day. I believe that's
right. That sounds right. You're right. We definitely have had this conversation before.
Yeah. But in any case,
obviously, every time we lose a big player in the distribution space, it becomes harder to get a slot with those other distributors.
Well, it's not even that. Like, I think it's near impossible for a lot of these small presses to get a spot at the bigger, because like they don't have, like, Diamond has a system in which you can reach out to them and go, I want to be distributed through Diamond, and it has gotten more difficult over the years. It's no longer where you can distribute your one self-published book like you used to be able to, but you can still say, we're a brand new publisher, we're going to meet the minimum amount of books you want per month, per year, we have a plan, we have the funds to do it, and they will distribute your book, no issue with, oh, we don't know who you are, we need to do... These other distributors are not like... They're not like comic book distributors, if that makes sense. Like, yes, they're distributing comic books now, but they are not bred in a way where they're like, oh, yes, come to us to distribute your comic books. It's a lot more like, oh, these big fish we're going to distribute. So, yeah, this could be fairly disastrous for a lot of these small press publishers if Diamond, like, gets into big trouble. But that's why I saved this particular thing for last, despite the fact that it is, I'd say, smaller from the Diamond side than losing Image was. But I think that this is maybe a path forward for some of these small press publishers. At least it is something to be discussed, and I think we should talk about it. But we're going to talk about what Vault is doing amid these Diamond issues. So Vault Comics, following the bankruptcy, has announced that they will also be leaving Diamond distribution. But they are going to be doing a new direct-to-retailer distribution system.
Oh.
So they've started up a new direct-to-retailer distribution platform, launching February 3rd. I'm sorry, that's going to launch alongside their existing distribution channels. So I guess they will still rock with Diamond for the time being, as well. But basically, retailers and comic shops will be able to sign up for a direct sales account, and then they will be able to place their orders for upcoming books. And the interesting thing with this is that they will start with the normal base discount that comic book stores have, which is 50% off,
Right,
and then
yeah.
they get 50%. But the higher you scale up your volume, the discount will grow for retailers.
Hell yeah.
So the more quantity you order, the more you can profit on each given issue, which is a really interesting kind of break to the general structure. I mean, I know there's every now and then we've talked about DC like announcing things where it's like, oh, if you buy packages of 25,
right, yeah,
cheaper.
of this
With
one
this
book,
being like a standard thing where no matter what you're ordering, as you scale it up, it will be cheaper, is an interesting way to try to incentivize more orders, and also a direct line. I mean, the thing here is retailers have to then pay for shipping, which is the downside.
I think Aftershock had something similar where it was look. It was similar, not the same, but they would have they had this program called like the Aftershock Ambassadors, and these people would like go to comic book shops in their area and like provide those comic shops with access to like exclusive variants and stuff. So they would like send their ambassadors a box of variant covers that's like, the ambassador variant.
That's cool.
And they would go to comic shops and be like, hello, I work for Aftershock. Like they might already have a connection with that shop, because they did for most of their places, but they could go into new shops and be like, we think you should stock Aftershock books. Here's like, bookmarks or whatever. And then also like, if you buy these variants, you have these cool ambassador variants that people can buy that you can mark up because it's a pretty niche variant. So I really loved the idea of that because it also incentivizes so much more the people who are the comic shop owners essentially to push for these books, because they're going to be books that they've chosen to put in. Like if they're looking through the Diamond catalog, that's one thing, but if they have that direct correspondence, I don't know why the book bin has come up now multiple times today, which is the little bookstore that I worked at. But there was a representative from
Penguin thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had a brain fart there for a second.
And there were representatives from these publishers who would come to the book bin, which is like, again, tiny bookstore, and be like, hey, here are the books coming out. Let me tell you about them. Let me give you the pitch on them. And it would give the book bin like a really good hands-on curating experience for like, oh, I think this is something that our readers would like. And if Vault is like trying to make those direct relationships with comic shops, I think that's really phenomenal. And I hope that's something that other publishers would follow in the footsteps of. So hopefully it works out financially.
Yeah, I mean the interesting financial thing about it is if you can pass the discount along to the retailer, like it looks like Vault's trying to do, from a publisher standpoint, you're not really losing much because you're not paying out anything to the distributor. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, again, is this forever? Maybe not, but this could be the solution if Diamond's really going a poor way for these small press companies that can't get in with, the big fish distributors. So I'm very interested to see if we see other publishers follow suit with this. And if they do, if something kind of starts to develop in a sense of like, it's funny because it's just going to sound like a distributor, but it's not a distributor, but like an online platform that is essentially for, small press publishers for, stores to order. And you might go, how's that not a distributor? Because they would just be shipping directly from publisher to shop. It wouldn't have a distributor distribute the book. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how that develops. It's an interesting innovation here from Vault.
I think the big sticking point is going to be that like physical transport of books, because obviously like someone like Amazon can do 2-day shipping for free because they have this armada of trucks that are going around everywhere all the time. If, a store is ordering 20 copies, you can send that through the mail or whatever, but it's not it's not the same scale as, oh, it's just going to be 5 more pounds on my truck, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think I would assume what Vault is banking on is having enough stores where they can essentially set up their own
yeah,
quote unquote distribution. Where I think it's just maybe that we're going to see comic companies taking on the role of distributors for themselves, which is obviously a big undertaking. But in theory, once you get it rolling, if it's successful, it should handle itself and it
right,
should be
yeah.
viable. But
So fingers crossed for that, because that would be really wonderful.
It would be. I mean, it would certainly be a huge shakeup to the industry, but I think that it could be a situation where it makes it much easier in certain ways to get things to stores, because you're not dealing with having to get into a distributor first or anything like that. It's kind of one less.
Yeah,
you talked about how the feedback loop has like each of these things that makes it more difficult. Yeah. This would be removing one, which is like maybe
right, but that does also lose the like quality control of a distributor, which absolutely. Is something a little scary.
Dinged and beat up books at stores.
Dinged and beat up, but also I just mean in terms of like, because if comic shops are used to publishers reaching out to them, it's like, hello, we are Mad Cave and we would like to sell you our books directly. They're like, yes, a Mad Cave book. There's also, hi there, I'm Rinky Dink Publishing. Here is my book I would like to sell to you. It's like, oh, this is like a really shitty self-published thing. Not to say that self-published things are shitty. Obviously, I love self-publishing.
That's what Katie just said. Katie hates self-publishers.
I love self-publishers so much.
She's never hated anything so much as she hates self-publishers, actually. You do not believe the amount she rants about how it's not a real book unless it has, a stamp from one of the... Katie only considers there to be 4 real publishers, actually. I'll let you guess which 4 those are. But
I don't even think I could guess which 4.
Doesn't even pick up the whole big 5,
Exactly.
She fully only.
I do always forget about Dark Horse.
See,
yeah.
Oh, there you go. She has just told you which 4 she considers real publishers, and the rest can go fuck off.
That's right. But in any case,
that's the news.
That's the news. It's big news.
It's huge news. I felt like it deserved to take up our full news segment with all the updates and stuff.
Absolutely.
But truly hopeful for the best for the small press publishers, because that's really it's frankly a little scary for small press. I know already a few publishers, I'll just throw this out, like Antarctic Press has mentioned that they are not going to be approving any new books until this is figured out, because it's real rough and trying to figure out how to solicit a brand new title on top of the other things you're already dealing with is going to be tough. So hopefully this will be sorted out, because it trickles down to really affect the small creator in a very negative way.
Yes. What a depressing note to end on. Let's go talk about comics that have been made. All right, comic geeks, we have some awesome pulls to talk about today. We have The Moon is Following Us, number 5, Nightwing, number 122, Titans, number 19, Laura Kinney, Wolverine, number 2, and The Moon is Following Us. Minor Arcana, number 5. I already said The Moon is Following Us.
You did.
But of course, that's not all we picked up this week. Jay,
no,
what else? What else is on your pull list?
Well, comic bookies. I got 2 covers of Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum. This is the new Green Lantern event that's supposed to lead into Green Lantern Corps. I really do need to catch up on Jeremy Adams' run, but I will continue to buy the books because it's how I am. I got the first issue of Ultimate Wolverine, because got to check out what that's like. And then I got the first issue of Shadow of the Golden Crane, which is a new Hellboy team-up book type thing, which seems very cool. And then for free, because I did not know they were doing this, and I think they did it as like a surprise thing, the Massiverse sent this out to a bunch of stores. Radiant Black, the story so far.
Oh, cute.
And, so I saw for free.
Who did I see posting about that? He's a Chicago-based creator, but he was very excited about that, which is great.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Nice way to try to keep people, get people jumping on point. Love that.
Yeah.
But Katie,
yeah.
What did you pick up this week? Anything titillating?
Haven't gone yet.
What will you be picking up this week, Katie? Anything titillating?
Well, Batman and Superman World's Finest, number 35. Batman and Robin, Year 1, number 4. A
lot of Batman.
And
Katie
a lot of Batman.
Cannot expand her horizon.
The Question. I Am the Problem.
Another Batman-related character.
Kind of. She's in the
Renee
Watchtower.
Montoya is absolutely a Batman-related character.
But she's in the Watchtower right now.
With Batman.
with Batman. Fair enough. And I'm gonna look at the inside of it because we talked about doing "You Won't Feel a Thing," the new Scott Snyder book, but there was like no information about it. When
Yeah.
we were like trying to read
That's the
descriptions
distillery
and
book,
stuff.
right?
It is. So I'm gonna scope that one out. I'm gonna see if
She's
that's
gonna
something I
scope
want
it
to
out.
read.
She's gonna
It's
scope it out.
got jock art, like Batman jock art, and
It's very confusing with this two comic book artists with the name
who
Jock.
just go by jock.
Yeah.
But so I feel like I'm gonna be swayed into getting it.
That's fair.
Because goddamn, that man draws a pretty bat.
Idea Batman.
Goddamn Batman.
And Scott Snyder, also Batman adjacent book.
Yeah,
So therefore, Katie has no horizons.
You are correct. Hey, no. I started reading the old Jonah Hex books. Like there's like a big omnibus of his earliest appearances.
Yeah.
And oh my god, they're so funny. Like
I'm trying
just
to figure out
people
my way to
bullying
claim Jonah Hex as a Batman book, and I don't know that I have one.
It does
so.
take place in Gotham, but that's not that's beside the point.
know.
Anyway, well, that's like the new 52 stuff that takes place.
Do you have
in
an
Gotham.
order? Do you have an order here?
Do I have an order? I was gonna ask if you had an order.
I mean, Nightwing and Titans have to be next to each other.
Let's just start with Nightwing, Titans. Let's do Minor Arcana. Then let's do. What am I forgetting about?
There's Laura Kinney and the Moon is
never mind. Let's do Wolverine, and then Minor Arcana, then Moon.
Let's
Moon.
do it. In 5 seconds, we'll be talking about Nightwing. See you there. Nightwing 122. Nightwing's past catches up with him. Nightwing faces the memory of a dark encounter from his days fighting alongside Batman as Robin. An encounter which might hold the secret of Spheric Solutions' mysterious CEO and her machinations for the city of Bloodhaven. The writer of this book is Dan Waters of Detective Comics, Lucifer, and Homesick Pilots. The artist is Dexter Soy of Red Hood and the Outlaws, Suicide Squad, and Batman and the Outsiders. The colorist is Veronica Gandini, and the letter is Wes Abbott. Katie.
Dan Waters, who you might also know from our video last weekend, where he was dubbed my favorite writer of 2024.
And he was third on my list, I believe, is where he landed on that.
Yeah, in no small part because of his work on Nightwing. I freaking love this book. I feel like we've talked about before how he does such a good job of bridging away from the like incredibly bright and sunny Nightwing of the Taylor run into his own grittier Nightwing. And he continues to do that so well. It really feels like I am reading Dick as a character. It feels like like you're showing there with the circus stuff, there's reverence to his past in terms of like backstory. There's reference to his past in terms of like recent things, like with Titan's Tower still being in Bloodhaven and Dick like sulking in there, which was a great scene. I love that so much. He was brooding, and he got called out for his brooding, which was very funny. But it's just so exciting, the stuff that's going on. I think that it's so fun when a vigilante has no one on their side. I think that when vigilantes have like the city behind them, it makes so little sense. With someone like Spider-Man, where it's like, yeah, here's our daytime superhero. It's like, yeah, if you want to look under his mask, you'll have to go through us, New Yorker thing. But with Nightwing, it's like, no, he's operating in the night, like fighting crime on the streets when most people are asleep. People probably think he's weird and bad. So the fact that the country, or the city rather, would be like, hey, Nightwing, what the fuck? We don't like you. We'll let the cops become super cops because they feel like they're protecting us is so good. And I think that tearing apart Bloodhaven is such a great thing to do for Nightwing, because so often Bloodhaven just is on fire, and it felt like a lot of those fires were put out for a while, and now it's like, no, we're lighting this city up. Bloodhaven is supposed to be the sicklier, disgusting little sister of Gotham. And oh my god, this feels like that it lives up to that. And just a really quick hit on Dexter Soy's art, it's so fun. It's got this like really great kind of manga-y anime-ish vibe to it. And I would like to point out that he very expertly pulled off making Dick not look weird in his Speedo. Like, I feel like everyone's so afraid of the Speedo these days. They're like, oh, we can't put Dick in his little scaly bathing suit. if you just lean into it, it looks fine. Like,
He did a very good job of like distinctifying the flashback pages,
yeah.
and
I literally, when I
they
was
had like
reading,
this quality to them that made it just so that, like, despite the silliness of the costume, it couldn't like it couldn't pull you
exactly,
out of it, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
And the costume wasn't even presented as silly. It was like
No, that's
nobody
the thing,
made
because
jokes
like
about it or
there's no,
anything.
no.
I literally, when I got to the flashback scene, I was like, "Oh, this is so gorgeous!" And I scrolled back up to be like, "Who did this? Like, who's the second artist on this?"
I had the
Because
same
it felt
thought.
so distinct.
I
I
had the
was like,
same
"Oh
thought.
shit, nope, it's all Dexter Soy, baby."
Yeah,
So yeah,
very, very
I
impressive.
continue to really really like this. Both Dan Waters and Dexter Soy, and I think a lot of the stuff with the flashback is on Veronica Gandini, who did
Yes,
great
the
coloring.
coloring is very different for the
Yes.
flashbacks. Yeah,
It's so different. It's got like this kind of flashbacky haze on it that's really
yeah,
awesome. Not to mention
perfectly
how
executed.
great she does with color and darkness in night, because we have a Nightwing who's like, I don't think we've really seen Dick during the day
No,
in this run so far, and she does such a great job of making things pop in the darkness. I'm gonna stop rambling now. How did
no.
you
I mean,
feel about
it's a good
Nightwing?
ramble. I mean, I honestly agree with you so like across the board on this one that I'm going to try not to take up too much time because I'm just going to be repeating things that you said. But I think I mentioned in the past. This is just really how I like Nightwing to be
Mhm.
kind of portrayed. This is a much more my alley Nightwing than what came before. And it's not that that's was bad. It's just not typically the direction that I
Which is
enjoy the
fair.
character in. Yeah, and this is fully that. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where like Dan Waters took great care to make it make sense in universe. It's like,
Mhm.
his friends are gone and the city's on fire. Of course he's going to be more serious. Like, there's no
Yeah.
like, oh, his personality changed overnight. It's like, no, the situation changed. And so he's acting differently. And that feels so genuine. And so it is not like this, oh, this thing came before, fuck that. We're doing our own thing. It's like, no, this thing came before and we're going to bridge into what we're doing. And that's really how I like new runs to handle things. I
Mhm.
don't want I don't feel like you need to we're going to do exactly what was happening before and just, make it this perfect. But like, no, say we did come from here. Let's go to where we're going. And that,
Yeah.
I think, is something that Dan Waters is really taking great care to execute. But yeah, great issue.
Great issue. Amazing. Are you ready to go talk about Titans number 19. Killer Frost breaks bad. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Killers have ice in their veins and villains are cold-hearted. See where we're going with this? This month's weather forecast predicts freezing overnight lows, ice storms, snow flurries, and a high chance of dead titans. Brr. I would like to marry whoever wrote that blurb. That's
My guess is fully John Layman.
Mr. Layman. This is
Because he
my
did the
official
same thing for the
proposal.
April Fools,
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
fully believe John Layman did both of those.
Mr. Layman, I love you so much. You're so cool. Like, this is the energy that I want the comic industry to have. The writer here is, of course, John Layman of In Hell We Fight, The Scorched, and Chew. The artist and colorist is Serge Acuna of Batman Urban Legends,
Sorry,
WWE,
just the
and
artist. The artist colorist was left over from the
oh
previous
no!
artist. I added in the new colorist,
I
and I
lied.
fucked
I
that up.
lied. I'm so sorry. Serge
Sorry.
Acuna is just the artist of Batman Urban Legends, WWE, and Darkland. The colorist is Matt Herms, and the letter is Wes Abbott. Jay,
Yes,
Titans almost broke your top 10 single issues of the year.
it
Uh,
did.
it was close.
It was fairly close. But it did not quite land on there. It did get an honorable mention, but we did a lot of honorable mentions for that one. But in any case, yeah, I've really been enjoying John Layman's run on Titans.
Mhm.
He's doing a couple things that are so great here. One is just the personalities of all the characters and the way they're interacting
So
is
good.
so good. He's a phenomenal team or group writer, however you want to call it. He just knows how to have all of the characters feel like they're doing something, which
Mhm.
is very difficult when you're writing a book like this, especially in a bigger universe. So all these characters matter to people on a very big level. So to
Yeah.
be able to show all of that, very difficult. But the other thing he's doing specifically in this run is he's giving us issue to issue plots along with the overarching narrative.
Mhm.
And that's just such a breath of fresh air. Like,
Yes.
I don't know why and I'm somebody who loves serialized storytelling. It's one of my absolute favorite things. What I love to be able to like binge read something and just get that
Right?
like full story. But when every single book is like that in the current comic landscape, like this is such a breath of fresh air, and
It
it
really
really,
is.
really feels so good. And the plot here is fantastic. There's one like and it's just a thing of like John Lemon being so smart. There's one thing that throughout the issue, like you're questioning and you're like, this doesn't feel natural. This doesn't feel like how this should be going. And then he hits you with that's because it's not. And like this actually was something I was thinking about. And I don't want to spoil that because it plays into the overarching narrative that's only being touched on in the last bits of every single issue.
Exactly.
But it's so freaking good and so interesting. And we get a nice little cameo from the Bitman in this one. I don't know if that's too much of a spoiler, but I feel like I can mention the few cameos in this without anything. And I quite enjoyed that and the way that was handled. So yeah, I love it. I love Serge Acuna did a great job stepping in for Pete Woods in this issue. Really did great with all the snow and ice imagery of the issue. It was
super
really
duper
fantastic.
Fun. Yeah, we've loved Pete Woods' art thus far, and Serge Acuna really just kind of picked it up. It was so good. I love that John Layman is like, he's so ready for there to be mundane things happening. Like during the like first tense conversation, Donna, Dick, and Roy are also like building a snowman.
And Roy it's like built the snowman in the most metal way possible. I fucking love Roy. This man is my favorite guy. Like fucking this man using his anger to throw the things into the snowman and create a perfect fucking snowman. Look at that. Look at that. Look at what Roy did.
Look at that beautiful snowman. But yeah, I feel like with John Layman, there's never a boring conversation. Like there's always something going on, and we've talked about it in terms of him being able to like make a space feel like it's full of all of the characters. And I think that's one of the tricks to it, is that I feel like the kind of camera is always moving for him. Yeah. Like John Layman is ready for the camera to face any angle, and something will be going on.
He knows what everybody's doing, even if they're not like the focal point of something.
Exactly. And I think that with Pete Woods and now with Serge Acuna, they like understood the assignment. They're like, yes, I get what's going on. This is how the page is going to look, and it's going to be just. It's such a. You touched on it with the really episodic storytelling of it. It's such like a good artifact as like a single issue of a comic book. It's like, this is the platonic ideal comic book.
Yeah.
And it's really fun.
Because it's doing both too. It's not like it's sitting here and it's like, oh, it feels like picking it up monthly isn't worth it because, you know, there's no like paid off investment for reading multiple issues. There is. That's there too. And beyond just the little like the building looming threat that's there, the characterization, the character arcs are also continued through the issues, even if the plots aren't. So the main thing being
Raven's emotions.
Raven and Roy's kind of butting heads over Raven's emotional issues, which are even, you know, we're talking about not just saying fuck you to what came before. This plays on very specifically what happened to Raven in the plot that we dropped Titans for, where we saw the play of it, that she was split into the two different Ravens. But that's playing into this, and it's really nice to see across these couple books that we're reading, these writers that aren't saying, because with both of them it's big course correction, like and course correction not in the sense of like it's a big change in course, not like they're like they just, both with Dan Waters viewing Nightwing as darker and John Layman viewing the Titans as less of a perfect unit and more of a like, you know, tension-filled team. They're both big differences from what came before. So seeing that respect for it in the transition across both books is really, really nice, because it's not always how it goes.
And I think especially with Titans, I have a harder time conceptualizing it with Nightwing, with so much more of the context. It feels like really approachable. Wow. Yeah. Like you don't need what came before. Like I'm gonna finish Tom Taylor's run because I really enjoyed it on Nightwing. I'm not gonna read the issues of Titans that we skipped because I just don't feel the need to do so. And with the way that John Layman has been starting off his run, I don't need to. Like the context is there. You can tell that we didn't just start off with these characters in a void, but it doesn't feel like the story relies on me going back and understanding the context. Like he gives the like little one-liners of context that you need, and you don't feel like you're picking up partway through an arc or anything. And that's really great.
Agreed. Yeah. And it's a true testament to the way that he can very quickly touch on what you need without it bogging down the story or making it, you know, a little bit too dense. Exactly. Yeah, great stuff. Really, really love this issue.
Super, super good. Are you ready to talk about Laura Kinney,
Let's
Wolverine?
do it. Laura Kinney, Wolverine, issue 2. Is New York City big enough for Wolverine and Daredevil? Wolverine is back in New York City, and what crosses her claws but the size of none other than Daredevil, the woman without fear. Fear and hatred of mutants is at an all-time high, and if Laura can't sniff out a terrorist plot before its unveiling, humans will die and mutants will be to blame. Can Laura solve this mystery in time? The writer is, of course, Erica Schultz of Daredevil, Rat City, and Xena Warrior Princess. The artist is Giada Belviso of Jackpot and Black Cat, Miss Marvel and Blood Hunters. The colorist is Rochelle Rosenberg, and the letterer is Corey Petit. I think we had a little bit of trepidation with the first issue. It was trying to do a bunch of stuff, and we weren't so sure about the savior of mutants, Laura Kinney. But in this issue, Erica Schultz is bringing in what I will say at this point is at least currently her character of Elektra Nachos. Katie, talk to me.
Okay, so I thought this was great. I was
I love the like change in cadence when you talk about Erica Schultz. Like you do that. You have like just this different cadence.
She's just so cool. And we
Number
talked
2, by the way, on Katie's best writer list that came out last week.
I feel like I have turned red after being absolutely called out. That's so rude. I can't believe you do this. But again, she writes the way that I want to write. Like, she is the blueprint for me at this point. Like, her and Scott Snyder, I want to be the culmination of them.
They're so like they both do the cat, but they're very different writers.
They are. They are. That's why it'll be a beautiful blend. Yeah. No one will be able to say that I've stolen from either of them. But yeah, I think that I was worried from that first issue because it was very like away from home. It was very like it was kind of a self-contained story. But but it also didn't feel like it was like the best paced self-contained story. Because it was just an awkward size. And like because you were dealing with a lot of like exposition coming in and also trying to explore Laura, and we got so much more exploration of Laura and so much more Laura in the Wolverine hood. It's so good. It was so fun to watch her and Elektra interact. The dynamic there is one that I don't think I could have pulled out of a hat. Like, I know that I'm not a big Marvel girly, but like it's really exciting to like be like, oh that's exciting. Like, aggressively disciplined but also kind of unhinged Elektra, and then unhinged and not disciplined Laura Kinney is such a great team up. Like, when they were on the docks and Elektra like literally slammed her face into the ground because she's like, no, we're waiting to attack.
Multiple times. Like, it happened initially, and Wolverine, Laura was like, I know how to be stealthy, and then immediately popped back up, and Elektra just like, the second time, like, really smashed her. It's like, you fucking idiot. Love it.
I love that both of them are such aggressive characters, and watching their aggression butt heads is so funny, especially because in like close readings we've had on Elektra over the past couple Daredevil miniseries, it's a lot of like, I need to like, you know, not be murderous and bad or impulsive. I need to like be a hero. And then we get to see her like actively being like, this is how you be a hero, kid. I've been working on this.
Very nice.
Like, it feels so earned from a Daredevil point of view. And so excited.
It's something where like you feel so much better when you've read, you know, Erica Schultz's 3 miniseries on Daredevil. So 2, you know, and the first issue of the new one. But, you know, it certainly feels better to have that as well and feel like, oh, I'm coming at this with both sides here instead of just the one side. Love that.
It's really, really fun. I thought this was a slam dunk of an issue, absolutely. And I really liked the plot of it. It's a kind of like what we were talking about with Titans, is it's actually got its own kind of partially contained plot. It ends on a cliffhanger, which, you know, busts a lot of that right out the door. But it feels, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when we were reading Ultimate Spider-Man, and I was like, okay, issue 1, like, all right, cool. And then issue 2, I'm like, this is the start of the series for me. Like, issue 2 of Laura Kinney Wolverine, I'm like, this is where the series really feels like it starts.
It is a really good start too. Like, you kind of get everything you need here. But yeah, I agree with you. The first issue, I was very hesitant. It didn't feel great. You know, it was again,
Mhm.
it was just like it was really like the thing is not even like the perspective has changed or anything. Like this is still Laura Kinney who's very concerned about
Yeah.
mutants and their that, but like we stopped being told that she was like the savior of mutants constantly and like having that like just constantly
Mhm.
focused on, and it felt much more natural here in like the way that it played with Daredevil and the way that it
Yeah.
played with Luke Cage and all that. um yeah, the dynamic was great between them, which I think happens when you have like, oh, this is the writer of these two characters at Marvel for like a while, so it makes sense
Right.
that Erica Schultz can play with them so well here. The cliffhanger was also obviously great
Oh,
and a
good.
really but this was like a very interestingly built issue, and like it starts very actiony, but it's still like the plot builds slowly throughout it, which
Mhm.
was a really satisfying. I think there's a
Right?
few things where I thought it was oh, interesting the way that a couple things are handled. Like there's one point where they separate to get back together like later after something's done, and that happens like within the course of one page. I was like, that was interesting that you
It was a
separated
little
them for
odd,
like
yeah.
a page. And then there's something with Luke Cage where like he said a thing and I kind of expected him to follow up on it, and then he just doesn't. And that was a little weird to me. But overall,
I
this was
think I
this
have an explanation for that, if it's what I'm thinking of.
all right, that's right. I just don't want to like hit on the
Yeah,
super big
exactly.
things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, overall, still really enjoyed this issue. Um, Erica Schultz knows these characters so well, and that's always going to
Mhm.
lead to a fantastic book. But yeah,
I also, just as a side note, I feel like Elektra got to be very happy in this issue. Like, she was thriving in a way that I feel like she doesn't get to in her solo issues because so many things are going wrong.
she
It was
got to
just nice
be
to
she
see her
got to be the
smile.
Daredevil to like Laura's Elektra, if that makes sense. Like, which was really funny. Like, I feel like in my mind, after this like whole adventure, she's just gonna go back and be like, Maddie would be so proud of me. Just like in a very like smug way, like I did it. I did it. I was the cool collected one. You won't believe it. Oh, you won't believe it, Matthew.
Exactly. Like, she is living her best life, and I love that for
Yeah,
her.
fully
Um,
agree.
but are we ready for our next book, which is Minor
It's
Arcana?
yes, it is. Let's do it.
Minor Arcana number 5. As Teresa begins to unravel the mysteries of the Edgewater Hotel, she's faced with a fateful choice, one that will decide her future in the town and of her strange new powers. But is it a gift or a curse? Only time will tell, and Teresa's journey into the unknown is only just beginning. The writer
Just
artist
begin.
here is Rick Flemire of Sweet Tooth, Black Hammer, and Maze Book, and letter is Steve Wands, and that was a terrible description. This
It
issue
was
is
not about the
the
issues at all.
basically a flashback issue to Teresa's grandfather, whose coat
Yeah.
she wears around, and who seems like a great fella from every issue before this. Like he's
Kitty's
really,
obsessed with this man.
I love a grandpa. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I don't have any, but I think I made that joke last time we talked about him too.
I'm
um,
dead. I'm deceased.
just like my grandpa's. In any case, Teresa's grandpa also, I think, is dead. To bring us back to our book here. And yeah, this whole issue is like a flashback of him and his relationship with the Edgewater Hotel as well. Jay, it's a real deviation from form for the
Yes.
book.
Yes.
How'd you like it?
Damn.
Damn.
Uh, yeah. This was essentially a hell of a one shot
Right?
inserted in here. This was, I guess, the best. It was brutally and viscerally real. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was. I mean, we get a little bit at the end that's a little bit less, but it's very viscerally real. It feels so like real life, and this person's just like stuck in their life, feels like they're supposed to be something more, but shouldn't really be upset for it. It's just it really works on that level. It's got a very like bogged down feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
The tone's so good. There's all these things of like we get a bit in the lettering where it's like fading out as he's like becoming less focused. There's all these things that are just so well handled in it. It's I mean I don't know how, because I think so much of it is, and I think we talk about this with Gentleman Mia books a lot, like so much of
Yeah.
it is the reading experience,
Mm-hmm.
but the reading experience of this issue is absurd, and
It's
you
so great.
really feel it in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel
You
like
get to
Jeff
the end
Lemire.
where like actually is maybe going to connect to the
Mhm.
series in an interesting way, but yeah, we just get a brutal one shot to lead us into that really is gonna fuck you up for a little bit.
I feel like Jeff Lemire's true bag is just the word haggard. Like, this man knows how to make a haggard old man. Uh,
Yeah.
and I feel like reading his work makes me a haggard old man. It's beautiful and wonderful. His art is so fitting for this style of story. It's really, really gorgeous, really wonderful. It's such a great, close character, character study of the grandpa, which I can only assume is gonna like come back and bite Teresa as we're like, oh, Grandpa's idolized. Uh-oh, Grandpa is a person, like with flaws and the such. I loved the bait and switch of him at the bar with his friend at the very beginning, and it's like, oh, he clearly doesn't have anything going on in life. He has like a nice little eye contact with a lady across the bar. And it's like, oh, maybe that's gonna end up being Teresa's grandmother. And then we drive home with him, and he already has like this beautiful family. Like he's kind of, living the dream. Like he has a wife and a daughter, and they love each other clearly. But like the emptiness within that, it's so fucking raw, dude. Like you said,
and you get him constantly like his thoughts on it, and him being like, I shouldn't feel like this. I should be happy. I shouldn't be doing this. But then visually, he's just doing it, and there's no. It's brutal. It's wild.
It's so well done. I fucking love Minor Arcana, dude. This is such a good issue of it.
This is the best issue of it so far, and
I would agree with that.
This issue did something that was just really. You gotta you gotta read this issue to understand. Like, I don't know that we're gonna be able to like put into words what it did, because it's a Jeff Lemire reading experience. That's how
it's the way you feel when you read him.
The way you feel when you read him. Yeah. That's absolutely correct.
But yeah, that may be a bit of a piddling end to it, but to our review rather. But are you ready for the Moon is Following Us?
The Moon is Following Us, issue 5. The final battle is at hand. For Penny.
For Penny.
Thank you, Todd McFarlane. If you missed the joke, me and Katie joked that these super short blurbs are written by Todd McFarlane after he's told kind of what the issue is about.
Yes.
But anyway, the writer and sometimes artist on this series is Daniel Lloyd Johnson of Transformers, Duo Powerbomb, and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. The artist is Riley Rossmo of Harley Quinn, Detective Comics, and Bedlam. The colorist is Mike Spicer, and the letterer is Sean Lee. We've talked about the series quite a bit on our best of lists.
Yeah.
Daniel Lloyd Johnson did crack the writer list. The book has been, I think, was on both of our best series lists, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
And it had an individual issue on my best issue list, and honorable mention from you. I
sure did.
In the best issue list. So we have loved this series, is what I was getting to in a roundabout way. Hit me with specific thoughts about issue 5 here, Katie.
Bro, this issue kicked me in the head. It's so good. Like it starts off exactly. Yeah, it starts off with oh no, I'm forgetting his name. It's because I got kicked in the head by the book. It gave me a concussion.
I'll get there in a second. Brio. It's Brio.
Brio. I was gonna call him Boink, and I'm like, it's definitely not Boink.
It's not Boink. It's not Boink.
You hear that, listeners? It's not Boink. It's Brio.
Not Boink.
Stop telling me
that
it's
a frog.
Boink.
He's a toad.
He's not a frog. He's a toad, which he tells us later on, and we don't need to talk about that.
We don't need to talk about that.
But it starts with Brio with the raw line of like, I know what it's like to get run over by a car. Or like it changes you to get run over by a car or something. It's like, Jesus Christ, Brio.
Things change when you get run over by a car.
It's like, Jesus Christ, my boy. Are you okay? And the answer is no. He's a frog who smokes. I'm sorry, a toad.
Can't believe you called him a frog.
I'm sorry. He's wearing the crown. He looks like a frog prince. This issue is so exciting. There's so much bombastic action. I absolutely lost it. At one point, Brio actually runs over an enemy with a tank, and I was like, that's an amazing visual gag. That's a phenomenal callback. So much doesn't happen in this issue. Like, it's such like
but that's important.
Exactly. And so like it is this, it gives you a really good sense of like hopelessness in this battle to lead into a big fucking reveal that is the part that kicked me in the head, and now I have a concussion and I'm gonna die.
One of the
Like,
back-to-back things, honestly, that kick you in the
yeah,
nards.
yeah. It's just another exciting installment of this book. I feel like we've talked about this with a few books before, where it's like I'm really excited to read this as a collected thing. Like, I think that it's doing a really good job with
this
the
is a great
monthly
monthly
format.
book. Yeah, this is a great monthly book. But absolutely,
but I'm really excited to like have that arc happen all at one time in front of me as well. Like, this is one that I think I say it as a compliment that I want to read it as the trade, because a lot of times I'm like, oh, I read it as it was coming out and I liked it. I don't need to read it as a trade. But this is a book where I'm like, yeah, I want to reread this in a new way, because I think it's going to be a really rewarding experience. And it's just super duper fun. Riley Rossmo's art is great. He gets to do a lot of like toy-based combat in this, which is super great. The one thing that I did miss a little bit, I think that we had a couple of moments between Duncan and Sam where they were getting along a little too well, without the moments where they're kind of like at each other's throats. There's like one little line, but then I feel like they're very nice to each other. And I'm like, okay, I kind of want them to have a little bit more autonomy, but like a big point of the issue is that they've been drained a bit from their encounter with Pigface.
So like, that's important.
But it is like a rough thing to have an issue where your main characters are drained of energy, because like, okay, what do they get to do then?
No, important. Like it's wild because it is this like big bombastic action issue, but like throughout that there's these little like bits and pieces that like the characters being drained, that like something feels off, and then you get kicked in the ass by the ending of this issue, and it keeps coming. Like, there are 3 moments that could be cliffhangers at the end of this book, and they all happen and they all play out, and it's just like, I can't handle that, and it all comes in the last like 4 pages, 6 pages,
something
maybe?
like that. Yeah,
like the last little bit of this issue after bombastic action for 20 pages or whatever. So it's really whiplash, and it's intended to be, because it makes it be delivered so freaking well. And it's you know, I just said it about Minor Arcana. I think this is gonna be up there for my favorite issue. The Moon is Falling. I said you still really, really love issue 2 as well. But yeah,
but my goodness, what a great fucking book.
What a great
and
book.
Such talented artists, both of them.
And we're only halfway through. Like, this feels like it could easily be like a penultimate issue.
It's great.
And we're only halfway through. Like, this is a 5 out of 10. Keep it coming. Keep it coming, boys.
Keep it coming, boys. But that's all I have about The Moon is Falling.
That's all I have.
Which means that the only thing left is the pull list rack.
I don't know about you. This is the hardest week we've had in a really long time.
What I'll say is I feel like it keeps happening on week 3s. Week 3s are stacked.
It's so absurdly stacked.
It's so fucking
like,
stacked.
How are you supposed to deal with these books on the same? And like, some of them, I think the books that have consistently been on this week are Nightwing, Titans, and The Moon is Following Us, and then
I think Minor Arcana.
No, Minor Arcana moved. Minor Arcana was with, I think, Laura Kinney last month.
Maybe. I don't know.
It was. I had to move it onto the dock, which is why I remember.
I believe you.
But in any case, it's a wildly stacked week, and I'm gonna ask you to start us off here, because maybe I can hedge. I'm not gonna do it because it's a shitty way to do it, but I like the idea that maybe I can hedge or feel better at least if you pick a different one. Yeah.
This, like you're saying, it's a really, really fucking hard week. I'm gonna give it to something that I didn't expect to give it to. I'm giving it to Laura Kinney Wolverine, number 2.
Okay.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
I really loved everything this week, but that one when I was looking at the list of things, I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna love Nightwing, I know I'm gonna love Titans, The Moon is Falling is fantastic, Minor Arcana is such a trip, and then just out of nowhere, I was like, oh my god, I fucking loved this issue. Like, I had so much fun reading this issue.
That's super fair.
Yeah,
that's super fair. Your number 1, or your number 2 writer, sorry, rather.
Yes.
Actually beating out your number 1 writer for that.
Correct, and one of my honorable mention writers.
Yeah.
And the poor writer who was just barely far enough down on the list to not make it to honorable mentions.
Yeah. This is.
How about you,
this
buddy?
Is tough because you did not pick one of the 2 that
I know. I figured.
Yeah.
Did that influence my decision? Maybe a little bit.
It's tough because I feel like both of these books are so freaking deserving.
Mhm.
But I feel the need to give it to Minor Arcana #5. That issue was
So
such
good
a
just as a
gut punch.
standalone issue.
Yeah, and like just bell to bell, the investment that I felt reading that issue through, like it had me captured, and
Mhm.
that is such an incredible thing to do.
It really,
Um,
really is.
yeah, it feels rough not being able to give the Moon is following us a shout on this
I
because
know,
goddamn
but
that issue was wild. But yeah,
goddamn it, it's just a good fucking week.
yeah, there are recommendations. Pick up Laura Kinney Wolverine issue #2 and Minor Arcana issue #5. They are worth a read.
Yes, they are. But now it's time to talk about books from the other side. We are readers, but of course we are also writers. And where we talk about our writing is in the Creator Corner.
Do it.
All right, here we are in the Creator Corner where we sit back, relax, talk about being writers, talk about moral
Far better.
dilemmas and our beliefs. Not really, that's not what this is about, but it's what the Creator Corner today is about. It's creating characters that have like a really strong moral core to them and how to balance that with letting them still be a good character. That was a really clunky way of introducing this. But it's something that I felt inspired by when we were reading today. It's like, okay, there are characters who have like really strong edicts at the
Yeah.
core of them. And they can be done really well in the case of literally everything you read today, because everyone is so good who was writing today. But they can also be very one note. Like we see a lot of criticisms of that when like Batman gets very like in text, I'm not going to kill anyone. And it's like, okay, calm down, buddy. And like
no kill, never kill, no matter what. Not an option. Can't happen. Won't do it.
Exactly. But it is like an incredibly good and fascinating character to have them have like a really central core tenet to themselves that like drives what they do.
Daredevil in a nutshell, right?
Exactly, yeah. So when you are conceptualizing a character, and we're talking about someone who has like a very firm set of beliefs, because not every character does, and not every character needs one, and some of them are going to be purposely ambiguous or wishy-washy, but also just many characters are just existing as real people who don't have like whose belief system can't be boiled down to a single like core edict. um so when you're building a character who has one of these like strong stances and like their plot is built around,
they stand in a really strong stance, you can't push them over. I got it. I know exactly what we're talking about.
Yes. How do you balance that with making that an interesting thing? Because like the interesting thing in most stories is going to be growth and change. But how do you let them grow and change as a character without like breaking who they are as a character?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. There was a lot there. So I'll do my best to take this from where.
Do you want to start smaller? Want to start?
No. I'll start with a question. I'm just gonna be like you kind of started somewhere and then like laid it on the question. So I'm gonna not.
I've never done that in my life. I've never talked in circles.
Okay. No. It's fine. I'll take the question of how do you let them grow without and then not gonna, because that's not really anyway. How do you let them grow without breaking who they are? Well, I think that it's gonna sound weird. It's weirdly simpler than I think people will, make it out to be. Which is that they can grow, and that's not going to break. Because I think where the issue usually comes from is being scared to allow them to actually grow, and thus you have them growing in more like artificial ways, where it's like, oh, they just figured out how they can somehow magically make their belief system still work with new context. It's the Aang learns energy bending right when he might have to kill the Fire Lord. It's like, oh yeah, no, he was not allowed to grow beyond that moral thing, and he's not gonna have to figure it out. Like it's gonna just work out, and that's growth. And that's from a show that's usually great with character development. So no shade, but it's a thing that happens very often because people are scared to like change fundamental parts of their character that they're worried will change the way the audience interacts with them. And so I think that basically, as stupid as it might sound, it's just a willingness to do it. I think
That's
is
so
like
fair, yeah.
the place that you have to start from is just like, okay, we have to be willing to change this character, and I think that's honestly a lot easier in indie and create your own comics than it is in when you're working
Because
on a
you're
character that's
typically
like,
working on a
yeah,
shorter timeline.
yeah, exactly. And it's not like nobody's gonna sit there and be like, this character's been this way for 15 years and now you change them. It's like, oh, this character was this way for 3 issues and then you change them.
Right.
Like that's, it's like, okay, all right,
And that
good,
growth and
great,
change is part of,
yeah,
like, it was always a starting point for them with that.
exactly. So it's certainly a tough question, because the other thing that is like, will editorial let you when you're talking about bigger
Right.
characters and all that? But I think it really does start from that willingness to do it, and then once you do decide to do it, it's just looking at kind of the natural progression of like, okay, what do they believe, and then I think you have to pull back to kind of why do they believe that, like what is it,
That's a really good point.
and that's the big thing with like using Batman's no kill rules, like the starting. Why does Batman believe he shouldn't kill? And I think this is something that creators disagree on, and that's why sometimes you get different. Is it because he's scared to go that far and then he thinks he won't be able to come back? Or is it because he believes in the ability for everybody to be rehabilitated? And the question between which of those reasons matters is a big difference, between how you're actually going to deal with a Batman who's growing,
Right.
Because if it is, okay, he's scared to let himself go over that line, that's more of a character flaw than it is, like great moral stance. Like, no, it's not that he thinks people shouldn't die, and in that case, okay, that Batman then should be in theory willing to let certain people kill if he's comfortable with them going over that line, say a Wonder Woman, etc. Or if it's Batman believes in everybody's chance at redemption, then you got to look at that and go, why the hell does Batman still believe in the Joker's chance at redemption? So you really have to look at it and go, why does he believe what he believes, and can that be challenged? And honestly, I think that's how you get to something like The Killing Joke, where that very much felt like it was, okay, Batman believes in everybody's chance at redemption, and it was broken in that issue, whether you believe he actually kills him in the end or not. Like, that was a real challenging and growth of that moral thing. So like, do that, really look at why they believe what they believe, and then if you want to challenge it, if you want to change it, that's how you go about doing it. You break or you change or you recontextualize what gives them that belief, and that's how they can kind of grow beyond it.
That's a super good answer to the question I didn't ask, which is,
that's that question.
I know I'm giving you shit. If this is like a core part of their character, like if I feel like Batman is a very extreme example with like the no kill rule. But let's
Batman's an extreme character in general.
Yeah, he sure do be. Let's have just a kind of nobody character, an amorphous blob. An amorphous
Bob.
Bob.
Bob the Blob.
Bob the amorphous Bob.
Yeah.
Blob the amorphous Bob.
Yeah.
God, I want that so bad now. My OC, please do not steal.
Property of Katie.
Yes, that's right.
Copyright, trademark. Boom.
Yes.
Now you can take it.
Perfect. So we have Blob the Bob, who is, his whole thing is like, he's like, I believe there's a scientific explanation for everything. And
the Reed Richards of it all.
Sure, yeah. And that's like an important part of his character to you, the writer. One of the things that's important to do with that is you don't have to avoid putting him in challenging situations, but you can't put a magic user in front of him if you want him to be able to hold on to the belief that there's a scientific explanation.
Yeah. I mean, Marvel and DC will absolutely do that for their characters that are like that, and then be like, they just won't. They'll be full unable to grasp it.
Yes, I think that an important thing is
the Young Justice Wally West
right? Like, buddy,
it all makes sense. It's all science.
Wally, my boy. But yeah, I think that that's an important thing, because you ultimately have control over this. Your character is not being confronted with anything that you aren't confronting them with. So if you have that really stringent internal thing of like, oh, there's a scientific explanation for everything, and then you, as the world builder, create something that doesn't have a scientific explanation, then it's like they either have to grow and change or just be wrong. but there's some immutable truths within people that aren't necessarily uh, contingent on the way that the world works like that, where it's like, oh, my character believes I don't know, maybe this is a weird one, but like my character believes that everyone should be free. And then if they end up going to a planet where like there are people who are enslaved, but it turns out the people who are enslaved are actually like turning the giant gears that are stopping the planet from exploding. It's like, okay, your character is now in a weird situation where they have to somehow figure out how to stick to their central edict while also
Katie's
not let
advice: write a story that could justify slavery, and that will be how you how you can deal with it.
well, I'm saying that the important thing is that the character has to be able to, in universe, believably hold on to that
Yeah,
central edict.
yeah.
And you can moving away from that example back to Blob the Bob, who believes that time is
Bob the Bob.
yeah. Um, you can do things that will change things without 180ing them. So if
Yeah,
Bob the Blob is like, there's a scientific explanation for everything, and then he meets a wizard, maybe Bob the Blob is like, okay, there's a scientific or a magical explanation for everything, and I know the rules of magic, so that makes sense to me. So there are ways that you can still stick to, like, kind of like what you were saying with the why of your character. Like,
yeah,
why does Bob the Blob believe that there's a scientific explanation for everything? Because he has seen the scientific explanation.
yeah,
He believes that the world ostensibly operates on a series of rules and laws that
yeah,
are, ever present. Um, and perhaps magic also does. And so he's like, all right, this fits into my belief. And just kind of grows it a little bit. So even if your character isn't able to hold on to that, like, deepest chorus of the belief, you can let
of
things
course, of his Bob the
into
Blob beliefs.
exactly. You can let things in to kind of expand that belief. And as long as you stick to why that belief was true for that character, then it still works with that. But when you have a character who is uh like kind of immutable and unmovable and stubborn, what do you think is like the greatest type of thing to challenge them with? Because to go back to the Batman example, because I feel like he's kind of the poster boy
Yeah,
for
he
this
is.
kind of
Yeah,
character, having something like the Killing Joke worked initially because it was like not necessarily a canon thing,
yeah.
and two, because you don't see a Killing Joke every week. Like,
No,
if every week Batman had something that made him challenge his ideal about killing people, then it would become really messy really quick. So um how do you work with plots that will use but not necessarily break someone's core characterization?
yeah. I mean, it's really it's tough, and I think a lot of times it's why you land on things where it's like, oh, we're not gonna challenge it because not even necessarily like the next like the other person writing a book with this character this week might
Right,
not
yeah.
really pay attention to that, so it becomes incredibly difficult. But I think that if it like I think that basically the answer is in your question, which is that you have to play more with bending it rather than breaking it, which
Mhm.
is basically just means like put them in a situation where they can't necessarily do what they want to do, or they can't necessarily be right, because I think a lot of times we fall into a trap, and then I think sometimes people overcorrect, of like always wanting the main character to be right in a situation,
Mhm.
or always wanting them to like kind of win out in like the way that they get exert their will, because it's like, oh, they're the main character, they should be controlling things. But like you can have them in a situation where it's like, oh, I would never, I don't know, Mandalorian, never remove my helmet, but then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, everybody on this planet is going to be slaughtered if we don't all like, bow down before the king, and part of that's like taking off your helmet and taking
Mhm.
whatever it is. It's like, okay, my belief maybe isn't so strong that I'm going to damn everyone around us to this, so I'm going to
Right.
be forced into kind of relaxing on that, and then I'll maybe complain to everybody after and immediately like backtrack on it. But in the moment, it's something where like I maybe can't do what I want to do, or I can't
Mhm.
exert my morality on other people in a given situation. I mean, you see this sometimes with like And I think sometimes it can be rough, but like in the current Batgirl series, where it's like Cass obviously doesn't agree with killing. That doesn't mean she can magically always stop her mother from killing around her, you know. And well, I think sometimes that goes too far, because even after she just kind of like is sitting there and not doing anything about the fact that her mother just killed people. But like it's the same thing, like you get that with like Punisher and Daredevil a lot when they're working together. Daredevil's like, stop fucking killing people, and Frank's like, why would I do that? I'm gonna keep fucking murdering these people. And then I think sometimes like that is a great way to handle it, because like the one character isn't just going to bow to the other character's morality, and you get kind of the example of, I think, it done wrong. And you look at Red Hood interacting with any character of the Bat family, and all of a sudden they tell him no killing, and he goes, "Damn it, you ruined the fun," and then goes and doesn't kill anybody. It's like it makes his morals feel so much weaker than whoever he's interacting with. I think that's the important thing. Is like all characters have morality, have will, not just your main character. So you have to sit there and be like, maybe, and you've mentioned not every character necessarily has like these staunch beliefs that they will never bend in that, but you gotta actually look at how other characters feel and how they believe, because not everybody bows down to what another person tells them to do, or like what another person believes. So kind of actually looking at the big picture of how it's going to interact with all these characters is a great way to start kind of maybe not challenging, but just making sure that your character's like strong moral stance isn't the only thing that matters in a story.
And making the strong moral stance interesting, having people challenge it. I think that.
I mean, I think that's. I just want to quick, like, because you touched on it. Like, I think that's a really important thing that people miss sometimes. Is if everybody in your world, or at least everybody we see in your world, who, even like just everybody who we see in your world who's a quote unquote good guy, has the same moral belief, your person is no longer like, you know, persecuted or like unique.
Their belief is no longer strong. It's normal.
It's like that's just what everybody believes. It no longer you can't just use the real world context of we know in the real world this is a hard belief to hold. It's like, yeah, but if it's not in your world, that it doesn't have the same impact that you want it to have.
That's actually a huge up. I love that observation.
It's the Green Lantern Green Arrow situation of it. If they were both Green Arrow, or if they were both Green Lantern, it would be very different. But they're allowed. They're the only characters in DC that are allowed to exist on very opposing moral standings.
DC. I think too, one of your points about your main character being wrong and in their like staunch belief, Ain't No Grave is actually a great example of that, where Ryder fully believes that if she just lies, cheats, and steals enough, she can lie, cheat, and steal her way out of death. She doesn't.
Nope. Barred her deal making, where she was full blown. Like I can be a what do you call what do they call them?
Bandit?
No, like the word for like the Western word for like a like there's a Western word for like a ne'er-do-well, but like
in outlaw.
Outlaw. There you go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Got you, buddy.
You got me. The funny thing is, I was forgetting all the synonyms too. I was blanking so hard there. I was like, I cannot find a word to tell you what I want. And ne'er-do-well was in my head, and I was like, I don't want to say that one. It's like the worst one.
I love the idea of reading Ain't No Grave and being like, yes, Ryder, our cowboy character, a real ne'er-do-well.
But a real outlaw, which is what I was going for, is
she is a real outlaw, but if your character has that staunch moral belief, I mean, Rorschach, another great example of that. A great way to write an interesting story is that they don't compromise on their belief, and that might end with them getting fucking dead, which is a really dramatic way to end a story, frankly. Like, that's pretty exciting. It's I think we've kind of, in most, like you said, with the way that people have really idealized main characters, I think that we've moved a lot away from characters who have like this extreme core tenet to them, just because like in the age of complicated villains, that also kind of
tragic story.
That kind of requires a complicated hero to go with them, because if your hero's edict is "I will vanquish evil" and nobody's truly evil, suddenly their edict means nothing. So I think that it's something that's kind of fallen out of fashion to have this very like kind of black and white character, or someone who's like truly uncompromising. But when done right, it's a really interesting type of character and you can see it in smaller scale things where like Nightwing is determined to help fucking everyone, my dear boy.
Everyone.
So he's like,
That man
okay,
loves his prey.
I'm not gonna abandon Bloodhaven. I'm gonna try to change the way that the gangs operate here. And so he's doing things that fit with who he is as a character, where it's like, I am going to help everyone who I can. But it's not necessarily in a boring way where it's just like, yes, I'm going to save them from the cops. It's like no, I'm going to do things that like go into my anathema. That's a word, isn't it?
I don't.
In any case, doing things that feed into that core tenant. Well, also like that's not necessarily the only thing going on. So you can still have a character who, in a smaller scale way, has these really core beliefs in the in their heart and soul, in their heart of hearts. And like Laura Kinney, she's going to save mutants. That's her.
She's
that's
the
her
savior of mutant kind.
She's the savior of mutant
I
kind.
didn't say that a single time this issue.
And she's gonna stick to it. She's like, oh, mutants. It would be smarter for me to try to figure out where they got this mutant bomb. No, I'm gonna save this mutant. So like you can have these really hard lines, and kind of let your character act intelligently within those as well.
Yeah.
Like she's not gonna attack right away because she's gonna listen to the intel once Daredevil slams her face into the shipping crate.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, I think sometimes you run into the fact of like characters acting completely illogically just because of like a writer wanting it to, wanting to drive home that belief. And it's like even people with staunch moral beliefs will have like points where they still act smartly. Like if you have a moment
like you were saying with the Mandalorian helmet.
Yeah, no, but not like I mean like you might have a moment where like in theory like they're in a room with somebody who's like like I think this happens all the time. We have somebody who's like undercover and they have to like stand in the room with like an absolute asshole who's like going off, and somehow
like
the character can't just like not even like that, just like somebody who's like saying things and like they can't keep it in. At some point they like give somebody saying racist, or in like in the Laura Kinney case somebody saying like anti-mutant things, and like she's supposed to be undercover and not let anybody know she's a mutant. It's like, if you are smart, and like maybe Laura Kinney's the kind of character who wouldn't be able to control herself.
Yeah.
But, like if you have a character who would, it's like just because they believe that doesn't mean they have to say it out loud in this moment if it doesn't make sense to say it out loud in this moment.
Yeah.
They could be biting their tongue that whole time and then leave and go like, fucking hate that guy, I'm gonna get revenge, I'm gonna prove him wrong, whatever. That doesn't mean in the moment they have to like all of a sudden give up their cover just because they can't let this person say what they're saying. It's like, have your character both, and again, where it's logical. Laura Kinney's maybe not the smartest and most, always gonna
emotionally stable.
Exactly. But like a different character, maybe like if they are a character who you want to portray as smart and even-tempered, as much as you might go, well, it makes them seem like the moral person, they couldn't let this person be talked down to. And it's like, no, it made no fucking sense because they compromised the mission that might actually help people.
Yeah.
To stop somebody from saying words they don't like,
Right.
So it's all in balancing what makes logical sense, what's best for the character, what works in the plot, all of these things. But I think you get these moments where people are like, I need to prove that this person is so moral that they can't let this thing through. And it's like, okay, that made no sense in the greater context of the story.
Yeah. You've proved your character is a dumbass.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking at you, Blob the Bob.
Blob the Bob, fucking dumbass. Man had to just start barking out that there wasn't real magic when everybody around was supposed to be a magic user. Really got them, caught out immediately. He got unblobified. That was the end of Blob
he got solidified, bro.
Yeah, that was the end of Blob the Bob. And that's how the very sad one-shot ends.
Exactly. Coming to Kickstarter soon.
Yeah. Katie Markham, writer. Artist.
Joseph Jasinski.
AI.
Hey, you know what? I saw the marshmallows you drew. You can draw a blob.
I can draw a blob. I can draw
a mean blob.
From one perspective.
Yeah, exactly. It's an artistic choice.
Yeah, it's never.
The choice is to not show you his bad art, but that's still the choice.
It's like a one scene. It's one perspective,
Exactly.
It's a one camera. It's a one camera sitcom. There's no. It's not a multicam here, so we're not.
Camera with a character who doesn't move. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's just
Um,
Bob talking to camera.
yeah. Um,
We have lost
but
the
in any
plot.
case,
So
we
sorry.
have. Uh, just as a quick kind of almost rapid fire thing, what do you think are some of the
No,
boons of?
sorry. I was trying to get ready for the rapid fire. I thought I
Oh,
could predict it.
oh,
Sorry.
no, 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 no. You should know
Finish.
that my rapid fire is not actually rapid fire. What do you think are like the kind of boons and banes of making a character with like a really staunch core? Like one characteristic at the core of them. Because there are
Bane.
obviously some good
Yeah,
parts and some bad
yeah.
parts.
Bane. Just using it to basically put your own belief in there and then thus
Mhm.
like preach at people. Never gonna work. It comes across really, because it comes across that you're more concerned with that than the story a lot of the time,
Right.
when it's just like, oh, here's self-insert thing. And that leads to my other bane, which is doing it to all the characters. When you're sitting there, it's like every character is going to have the same thing that is my belief, because I can't wrap my head around writing somebody who doesn't think and act and be exactly the way that I am.
Yeah.
Boone, maybe giving them a belief that isn't perfect, or a belief that you don't necessarily believe in, or something that is relevant to the story that you are already planning to tell. Something that is going to be more in service of character, of story, of development, rather than just being a belief that you went, this is important that it gets out there. Those are my quick ones. I don't know if I have anything
That's
else.
super fair.
If you want
No,
to rapid fire
that's very
something,
valid.
those are a
Yeah,
couple
I
I
think that the big bane of it is when you let it get in the way of them like growing and developing as a character. Which I think is also kind of, when you do let it happen, is one of the boons of it, because if you start from like a place of extremity, it's like very dramatic when they change. So you get to have like a really high stakes arc if you're like, oh, my character starts off with this incredibly strong belief and they end with that belief different. It
Yeah.
doesn't again necessarily have to be fully 180'd, but
No,
like that could be a really powerful story of like learning that you are wrong and how to like make room for more perspectives than your own. I think that it also makes for an incredibly powerful story if they fucking die for their belief. I going back to Ain't No Grave, if she like learned her lesson.
I thought you were gonna say going back to Rorschach there.
I mean
You brought that
Rorschach
up earlier in
too.
the thing. Yeah.
But I feel like if either of those characters like learned their lesson or something, or changed their belief in any way, the ending of both of those books would have been so much less impactful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it lets, when you go to extremes, you're kind of characterifying as opposed to humanizing your character a bit. But that means that you can lean into that with other things. If someone can be inherently good, then characters can be inherently evil. Like, or if one person in this universe is going to feel so strongly about this that they would die before they compromised it, other characters can feel that way about other things. Like it kind of sets the tone. I just think that it's a really it's something that you have to commit to if someone is gonna have like a really strong core of their character. You have to make sure that that's reflected in the universe, which I think is one of the reasons why Batman often gets shat on for his.
Yeah.
Because
it does it. Yeah.
He's a real fish out of water when he's surrounded by most other people. It's like, you're a freak. But oh no, we didn't look at our list.
No. Let's quickly see if we have enough that are just normal going. We won't have to add anything. That'll make our life
exactly.
easy.
That'll make our lives
we're gonna have
so
to
much
cut
easier.
Here quickly. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It sounds like we have a lot.
8. We have 8.
Yikes. Those 8 being Arcbound, Drawing Blood,
Hour of the Wolf,
Hyde Street,
Justice League, Prairie Gods, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Void Rivals.
Oh wow! And like,
yeah, that's including cutting that one thing at the bottom there that I think we had agreed we were going to cut. I don't know if you have that on yours.
I don't think I even have it on my pull list.
Oh yeah, we have something that we agreed to cut after a couple issues, so we're gonna cut that.
Yikes! None of those feel very cuttable.
No, we're pretty invested, I think, in all of those. So
yeah. So I suppose we're doing an 8-week pull list.
That's gonna
next
be
week.
Brutal. It's gonna be a long episode. I'll try to keep the news super brief. But
I
Katie,
will ask a very direct question for the creator.
Yeah. You want to do, every time she says that, it still goes the full length.
It's because we're certified yappers. It's a problem.
Do you want to quickly tell people what has happened and what will be happening?
Yes. So this past Sunday, we posted our top 10 writers of 2024, which was an incredibly hard list to make, an
Oh yeah,
incredibly fun video to record. So go check that out. Super duper fun. The week
go
before
check that
that,
out.
we posted our top 10 series of 2024. And we don't normally reach this far back, but even 1 week before that,
Yeah.
we posted our top 10 single issues of 2024. Those
Yep.
have been such fun, and we would love to hear what
Yes.
your writers series and issues
But
were
we
for
got one
your
more.
own 2024, and if you agree or disagree with ours, because we
Yeah,
did rank them in a numbered list,
we
which
did.
means that they have
People will
been pitted
disagree.
against each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we
uh,
got one more coming up this weekend. It's going to be our top 10 artists of 2024 to
yes.
round off our little quartet of videos that have been so
Mhm.
much fun to do. And yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy that. Get in some predictions if you've watched enough Script Heroes to know what we like. You can try to guess somebody who will be on maybe one of our lists or both of our lists.
I
But
think you can
it's
probably
gonna be a
guess
good
a
time.
couple.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a very fun
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So that'll happen this weekend, but also every Saturday now from 9 to 11 Eastern, we stream Marvel Rivals. This Saturday, it's gonna be a little bit
A
later,
little
I
bit
believe.
later. It's going to be an evening affair.
Yeah,
Probably not until 6:37 my time.
so probably around 8. It's probably gonna be around like an 8 to 9:30 Easternish
Something like
stream,
that.
somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Uh, we will certainly figure it out. But
Yeah.
we'll let you know when we have figured it out on socials. But in any
That's right.
case, that's everything. I'm not gonna keep rambling here. So hopefully, see you next week. Comic Geeks.